So director Tim Burton brings his stylized vision to a classic American folktale. So don't lose your heads over the legend that is Sleepy Hollow. In 1799, New York Police Constable Ichabod Crane is dispatched to the quite upstate town of Sleepy Hollow, where a series of violent beheadings have occurred. Yet what he learns of this mysterious village is the legend of the Headless Horseman, once tasked by German princes to keep the Americans under the control of the British. He was hunted down and decapitated, but his spirit remained to haunt the western woods. Now he stalks and takes the heads of various townsfolk without explanation. Thinking the town elders are foolishly superstitious, Constable Crane believes science will reveal the truth to be a perpetrator of living flesh and blood. Amidst his investigation, he becomes quite taken with Katrina Van Tassel, daughter of Baltus Van Tassel, head of the town, has become further entangled as the web of secret machinations start to unweave themselves through Ichabod's digging. Witchery, infidelity, and conspiracy tie up together to show that the horseman may be a supernatural terror, but that there's a far more vindictive and self-serving plot pulling his reins, which may see Katrina's life endangered by the horseman's inescapable blade, leaving only Ichabod capable of ending the nightmare that haunts Sleepy Hollow. So Tim Burton's rendition of Sleepy Hollow hit US theaters on November 19th of 1999 and hit UK cinemas a little bit later on in January of 2000. It's kind of interesting to note on the US release date, the James Bond film The World Is Not Enough also opened on that date, and I got to say a little back-to-back double feature of Sleepy Hollow and The World Is Not Enough on the exact same night. And the whole film grossed about $207 million off of a reported budget somewhere between $70 million and $100 million. And it's a very stark difference from how the film kind of originally was designed for back in the early 90s, between special effects artist Kevin Yeager, who had worked on numerous Nightmare on Elm Street sequels, the first two Child's Play films, and a whole bunch of wonderful stuff as well, and screenwriter Andrew Kevin Walker, who would later go on to write the script for David Fincher's Seven. And his spec script for that got some attention of some producers that got the thing moving along and kind of moving up in the world. And the original idea was kind of maybe like a $30 million sort of, what Yeager was kind of calling a sort of pretentious slasher film where there's like a spectacular death every few minutes. It was looking like it was going to be a very high body count, gory type of film with a lot of special effects are kind of like the centerpiece, but wasn't going to cost a whole ton of money in a certain way. But studio executives really didn't see the commercial appeal of that idea, especially in the mid-90s, where horror was kind of struggling, wasn't really finding its way, wasn't finding its footing, didn't have as much commercial appeal as it had back in the 80s, so highly gory type of film really didn't seem like a very stark, great idea in a certain way to be financially successful, but as things went along and they kind of built things up and they kind of relegated Yeager back down to just special effects makeup artist in the whole thing and started to find other people to helm it and kind of develop it later on when a new CEO of Paramount Pictures stepped in and championed the project. And by June of 1998, Tim Burton had already become a major force in Hollywood after stuff like Batman, Batman Returns, Edward Scissorhands, getting Oscar nominations with Ed Wood and a whole bunch of other stuff that has made him on a very solid track record of being a very solid blockbuster type of director. And this has pretty much been just after the entire thing with Warner Brothers Pictures, where the Superman project he'd been working on with Nick Cage probably had just fizzled out. So he's looking for another job, another project, and they have this right at his feet here. And it was such an interesting type of thing how he was kind of looking at this project in a certain way, because it's clear Tim Burton's very heavily influenced by old-style horror films and stuff like that, Hammer horror, all these magnificently gothic, beautiful type of things. But he never actually made a distinct horror film before. He'd always made a little bit of a dark comedy, or he made the Batman stuff, or made little things here and there that had little elements that could be attributed to that sort of influence, but weren't a straight-out horror film. And so you found a little kind of amusing in that type of way that now he finally got a chance to work on something that was much more geared towards that direction, and he could absolutely positively put his stamp of quality on this type of thing and put his entire production design quality in this whole thing, where he brought people back that he worked with before to kind of develop the ideas and the designs of the whole film and all the beautiful type of things that come across on this movie. And certainly one of the things that was designed sort of early on was the change in the mythology, the change in the story of the main character of Ichabod Crane, Richard being a school teacher in the original Washington Irving story, and now kind of moved into being like a New York detective in a certain way. And so the ideas kind of developed from the original ideas they had with Andrew Kevin Walker and Kevin Yeager, move them forward and develop them to a way Burton kind of liked the story to fall into, and all these different things have a little sense of mystery, a little sense of the supernatural, of course, and also a little bit of romance in there in certain places. So they added in all these little elements that kind of worked so well into what Burton could bring to the dynamics of the story and into the film in general. And I think they really did a nice job to really kind of move the source material into something that could adapt itself into a different type of story, that could still center on the same sort of signposts of the mythology and the story, but wrap a new mystery around it and wrap different ideas into the entire story to make it just a different type of take on the entire thing. And I think it really worked very well, and Andrew Kevin Walker is a fantastic screenwriter and absolutely positively shows his quality and what he could bring to this production as the guy writing the dialogue, putting the script together, the story together, all these different things, making some very interesting characters. I think all of it really came together, and just the overall design of the film, which actually won an Academy Award for its efforts and all these different things, really comes through fantastic. I just love this sort of turn of the century, right at the beginning of the 19th century type of feel, going from the end of the 18th into the 19th, and you got all the wonderful designs of all the period authentic type of feels and everything. So I really just like the feel of it. It just feels distinctly Burton, but they nail a certain time period and a certain feel for it all, and all these different little things that really kind of brings out the moodiness, the sort of atmosphere of the film in such an interesting type of way that I like so much, how everything just comes out as such a very striking design. Most certainly the entire gigantic tree from hell sorts that the Hessian horseman kind of resides in. His soul kind of got buried in that spot and grew out this evil tree of sorts from hell is a very powerful image in the entire film, and really works so well as a centerpiece. And just generally all over the place, the whole thing just has a really solid design to it. All this stuff comes together with such an amazing vision, because I just love the overall visual style, the sort of gray muted feel to it all. It just exemplifies and enhances, accentuates the qualities of the design of the film in general. Just like everything comes out so impeccably well. Burton just nailed it so much with the design team he put together for this film. And Johnny Depp had a very interesting sort of original approach to the character of Ichabod Crane here, because he read the story and read the description of the character in that, and really wanted to go for a very exaggerated prosthetic version of the character with sort of an elongated nose in a certain way, kind of pointed ears, just like kind of a gangly feel to the character in a certain way. Studio executives didn't have any of that. And even if you want to go even further with it and do different things with it, they want to at least keep it recognizable. They didn't want to push it too far into the weird. But Johnny Depp does such a fantastic job in this film. I just love the quality and the complexity of the character in a certain way. I just love the fact that there's sort of a progressive guy in his era, where they don't really kind of buy into science, the forensic science, as they do in law enforcement now. Back then, it's kind of like matter of fact, face value stuff. What you see is what you get, and he's a progressive scientist in this era, trying to use forensic science and all these different chemicals and all these different procedures of trying to use the mind in a certain way to deduce and deduct and kind of deconstruct the crime to find out the real cause of everything. So he's a very progressive type of guy, but he's also kind of socially awkward in a certain way. Just like, I love the fact that he's so scientifically intelligent, but he doesn't really have the social graces. He's a little bit kind of he's definitely a coward in a certain way, but he's got all this great comedic charm in the film. Just love everything he does here, because he just wraps up in such a charming package. He's so endearing in this character that you immediately are drawn into him, because he's a very compassionate, sort of sympathetic type of figure. You see the humanity in the character and how he's progressing and how he's presenting his argument to the entire board or whatnot back in New York and everything about what he feels about his science towards their sort of way of doing things, and going off the Sleepy Hollow, now having to deal with all this sort of hocus pocus sort of supernatural stuff. They just like all this stuff, just like he doesn't believe in it at all. It's too far-fetched for him. It's like, no, science is the way to go. And it's such an interesting thing how they kind of weave that into his backstory in a certain way, because you get, as the film unfolds and you see all these sort of dream sequences come to light and everything, you see that his mother was murdered by his father at an early age, and he's sort of lost faith in anything else except for the cold hard facts and science and stuff like that. So that it kind of drives the purpose of the character in the film. You understand where he's coming from this age, where that's not the norm, and so that builds, it creates the depth of the character, keeps something in line that makes sense for why he does what he does and how he progresses through the film. I just really love how he brings that quality to the forefront, how he portrays every single moment of this film, whether he's adding in those comedy tinges in these certain moments where Burton's so good at this sort of stuff, where you're taking the moment that really is kind of creepy, it starts getting a little bloody and kind of a little bit disgusting in a certain way, but then it turns into comedy. Like when he's hacking away at the big black tree in the forest and just starts spurting blood on his face, and it's just like, it's funny, while also still maintaining a certain awkward sense of horror in a certain way. It's really good, because Burton, Depp, so much on the perfect wavelength together, worked together 3 times at this point, making this film, doing fantastic work together. Just like, I love the character of Crane here. Everything that's done with him, I just think it's a wonderful performance. I think he just does so many good things with it to get you involved. The slight romance that you're having there between the character of Ichabod and Katrina here, I just like the little moments. They really play those moments very genuinely. I like how that relationship develops. It kind of creates an emotional tether with the character of Ichabod there to make sure that he has sort of an emotional attachment to something here. That even though he's kind of had this backstory and all these mentalities of how he does things and kind of is not quite believing what he sees up to a certain point, then turns a corner. All these things wrap around in the emotional quality of the character. Like, there's so many wonderful things how, again, he can be a coward at one point in time where it's like there's a spider on the floor and he's kind of freaking out and everything, but when he's less like that, when he's more kind of like following his passion, his heart and whatnot, when he's racing towards Katrina at the end of the film and having to save her, it's like the danger really doesn't factor into his mind or whatnot. He has to do what he has to do to save the people that he cares about. So I like the quality that he rises to the occasion, despite his reservations, despite his flaws, his weaknesses as a character. He rises to the occasion, becomes a heroic figure at certain points. So I like that quality because it creates a humanity with the character so much. I think Depp exemplifies it so well in this whole film. And Christina Ricci is wonderful. I really do like her. I, of course, grew up in the 90s when she was a rising star, and of course I had a little bit of a crush on her, as many people probably did, and I thought she was a really good actress. In this film, I do feel like, whether it's just like, it's probably just might be a combination of just the use of the accent of the time and using the sort of period dialect and the dialogue as such. Some of the deliveries of lines are a little bit stilted and stuff like that. And I think she also kind of did reflect on the character as not having a whole lot of emotional depth, and I really can step up and say that's definitely a case here, that she is a little bit wafy in a certain way, but she does have such a purity to her. The character of Katrina just has a purity that you can get involved with. She's the one character in the town of sorts that really has that heart, that compassion, that sort of just maturity about her that just comes off as a very honest type of character in such a way that I think it does enough in the film. I don't think there's quite as much as there could be if they wrote the character a little stronger in certain places and gave her a little bit more to work with. But I think Christina Ricci does a very fine job in the role that I think just really connects with Johnny Depp. I think their chemistry together is really good. I really think that holds a very strong bond throughout the entire film. From the first moment for the very end of the film, I think they do really good work together all the way through. I think it's really nice. I don't think, again, the character is written as strongly as it could be, but I think she does as much as she possibly can with the material she's given. And there's a lot of elder statesmen, like I said, in this whole film. There's like Michael Gambon, you got guys like Jeffrey Jones and Michael Gough, who had worked on the Batman films with Burton and kind of pulled him out a little bit of almost a retirement of sorts to get him back into this film, because I guess he'd been a Hammer horror regular and he just wanted to have, once I'm finally doing a horror film that has those sensibilities, just want to get this guy back in one more time to be in that film. It really meant a certain amount of thing to Burton there. And of course, Ian McDiarmid, who everyone knows from the Star Wars films, who had actually just finished shooting Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, up in Leavesden and Shepperton Studios, where this film was actually shot. And so you kind of have an interesting sort of dynamic between the two different productions, I guess. He had worked with a lot of green screens and such like that on Phantom Menace, and was so kind of refreshed and whatnot, coming on this thing with so many authentic sets and stuff like that. There wasn't that type of aesthetic. There was just like sound stages and stuff you could work with, a tangible environment you could embrace with. So all these guys really do a top-notch job to just bring all the qualities you need to having them wrapped up in such contentious type of conspiracies-laden type of things in the film. They're all really good actors, do a really fine job here. Miranda Richardson, who plays the stepmother of Katrina, has a really juicy part in this film, just like she doesn't have a lot in like the first two acts. When you get to the final act of the film, she's just got a really juicy piece of villainy to kind of chew herself into a little bit. Not too over the top. I just think she's really enjoying the moment, and she's really kind of committing to being just a heartless character altogether. Just like, I love the machinations of it all. The entire thing with the story here, with all the twisting things in the plot and sort. So it's like this little town, upstate New York, and they got all the supernatural stuff, the haunted woods. They've got all the infidelity going on, and all these little kind of secrets and kind of condemnable little things they've got going on in the back rooms and their back pockets. All these little things in the shadows of this little town. It's all kind of interesting type of stuff for Ichabod to kind of put the little piece together, thread through the mystery a little bit to find out where all the little ties are here and there and where the trail leads to. I just like those elements of the story so much. I think that's why the script in part works so well, because it creates that mystery from what's a very short story, expands it to something that can work as a full-fledged feature film here, and create an overall mystery, create a deeper story in a certain way to envelop the characters into, envelop the audience into a story that can unweave itself as you go along. I just really like how everything comes together in the story. Just really, really works so well. And having Christopher Walken end up being the Hessian Horseman is a stroke of goddamn brilliance, in my opinion, because I kind of remember when the film was released, there wasn't really a whole lot of any sort of direct promotion that Walken was in the movie. Now, I believe there were some like banners in the theaters, stuff like that, but there was nothing in the trailers, nothing in the really TV spots really kind of give away that he was the one in that. But the fact that they kind of tell the backstory of the Hessian fairly early on in the film and revealed that Christopher Walken is that character, I just love it. It's like Christopher Walken, who had worked with Burton on Batman Returns in a phenomenal role. I think he just has a fun time. He doesn't have to learn any lines of dialogue. He just has to look scary as goddamn hell and just growl at the screen. Just like he's certainly sat in the makeup chair for quite a while, but I'm sure he had a really fun time doing it. And another Star Wars connection, Ray Park actually did all the stunt work for the Headless Horseman. So all that writing, all that swordsmanship, all that stuff is Ray Park, the guy who portrayed Darth Maul in Phantom Menace. The guy's phenomenal. He's phenomenal. Stuntman, martial artist, all this stuff. Did an impeccable job with that type of stuff. So all together, put together with that, and the amazing visual effects in this whole movie, create an overall package for the entire thing, because they just look absolutely phenomenal for just about all the effect shots you have in the film. So there's just a few little beats here that just show a little bit of something that's a little bit more exaggerated and doesn't sell as well on screen, but they did so well. And unfortunately, it was up in a really tough year against The Matrix and Phantom Menace and a couple other films that really couldn't break through in the visual effects Oscar category. But regardless of that, the effects hold up so spectacularly well. And they used a mixture of digital effects. They used miniatures, such as the windmill at the end of the film. That was all practical blow up in that whole thing. They did such an amazing job, again, doing this stuff on sound stages, stuff like that. When they tried to scout stuff in America, like upstate New York and Massachusetts, Northeast America, really couldn't find anything that quite worked. that worked for the style or the conditions they needed, or the visuals they really kind of looked for to have the mood and the style of the film. So because Burton had worked on Batman in the UK, they went off to the UK and used, again, Leavesden and Shepperton Studios to full effect and make such an amazing looking film and have all the best things going for it. Again, Kevin Yeager, working on all the practical makeup effects in the film, nails the shit out of it. All the severed heads look absolutely phenomenal. Just like, they just make you squirm every time you see every single one of them. Just like, it's such impeccable work from him. Again, he's one of the best there ever has been, and still should be commended for all the work that he's done throughout his career. Top-notch type of stuff there. And getting back to the overall look of this film is courtesy of cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki, who ended up being a 3-time Academy Award-winning cinematographer for Gravity, Birdman, and The Revenant, and of course, a whole ton of other nominations, including a nomination for Sleepy Hollow as well. So this guy, one of the best cinematographers out there, and he makes this film look absolutely gorgeous. I love the fact that even though this is sort of a highly desaturated gray overtone look film, it looks stellar. I love the whole use of light and shadow throughout the entire film. Just like, the beauty of this film is so absolutely wrapped up in the atmosphere of the horror in such a way that's like, everything just looks like a brushstroke with the heavy layers of fog in the forest, all these wonderful things. Again, using the beautiful production design to immense quality here with how he lenses it, how he photographs every shot, and how he just lights everything so well. It has that starkness, but it has an enrapturing just style to it so much that you get enveloped so deeply into the film from the visuals that just pull you into the movie. I just love so much how this looks, that even though, again, like it is so desaturated and has sort of a oblique look to it, because this film has such a dynamic style to it, dynamic tone, it doesn't feel so bleak, because you've got elements of the humanity, you got elements of the humor in certain places, and you also got the thrills of the film as well. So you got all these different things happening. That doesn't make the film feel bleak. Even if it has that desaturated quality, it still has a liveliness, still has a vibrance to it. You still have a charge in the film in a certain way. So everything still works so well, and how he just puts it all together with such an amazing looking film in general. Just like, I just love how everything is shot. There's not a flaw in the cinematography anywhere. Everything just comes together with such a wonderful thing, how you just make the woods feel so claustrophobic with all that fog. I just love how that feels. Again, you can kind of sense that it is sort of on a soundstage, but I think that works so much, again, towards that old style Hammer horror type of stuff. I just love how Burton can bring that stuff from ages ago, decades back, bring it forward, adapt it into his own feels and sensibilities, and still have a certain uniqueness about how it feels and looks on screen. And the score here, obviously, from Danny Elfman, the regular collaborator of Tim Burton, is a very good piece of work. Nothing that specifically stands out as anything exceptional in his filmography of work as a composer, but it's very reliable, very effective type of stuff. I think it did a really good job to maintain a certain level of quality going on in this film. I just think Sleepy Hollow is a really good film. I just kind of got an itch to it. I saw a little thing about the anniversary of it in the UK release and everything like that. Just like, it sparked something in me. It's like, I hadn't watched it in many years now. And it's like, I got on a bug to kind of watch it and kind of check it out and get into it and everything like that. So it was really good. I think there might be a little bit of a slower pace than some people might want to get from it. I think maybe in some places it's just a tad bit slow, and it's a little gradual of a pace in a certain way that maybe at certain points it could get tightened up a tad bit. But I think in general, I think it's a really well executed type of thing from Burton. I think it's one of the really good ones before he got into some stuff that was getting a little bit more kind of critically wonky in a certain way. He did the Planet of the Apes remake and some other little things that kind of hit, some things that hit good box office, but may not hit as well with critics and stuff like that. So this is really kind of a good thing to kind of end that really solid 90s decade that started with stuff like Edward Scissorhands and Batman Returns, and again, Ed Wood and stuff like that. So he got up to a really good, solid place in the 90s. And I think he did a really good job with this. Again, the very experienced actors in this film nailed the living hell out of it. Depp is fantastic in this thing. Burton's on top of his game, doing a lot of really fantastic, entertaining, good, moody type of stuff. I just really think it's worthwhile. So guys, Love to hear what you think about the film. Just post your comments below if you really enjoyed what I had to say here about this film. And this sort of unexpected review, a thumbs up is deeply, deeply appreciated. And guys, I'll be back with a whole variety of different things coming up. Won't tease anything right now, but once I get to it, I'll let you guys know what's coming up in the near future. So guys, thanks absolutely so much. Take care. Bye-bye.